My name is Ayeshes, and if you had told me when I was a little girl that one day my own family would abandon me, betray me, and hand me over to strangers, I wouldn't have believed you. But it happened. When my parents split apart, my father took my brother, my mother took my sister, and no one wanted me. I was just a burden, so they left me in state care like I was some unwanted package. I thought my life couldn't get darker. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I survived, I'd learn to forgive them. But years later, when I finally built a life of my own, married, and stepped into my husband's house, fate played the cruelest joke on me. Because the woman waiting there, the one who was supposed to become my new mother, my Saz, turned out to be even more poisonous than the family that had abandoned me. And this time I wasn't going to be a victim. This time I was going to fight back. I still remember the day my world split apart. I was only 9 years old, standing barefoot in the middle of our old living room, while my parents screamed at each other. Their voices clashed like thunder, the kind that rattles windows and makes you want to cover your ears. My brother sat close to my father, clinging to his shirt. My sister was pressed against my mother's waist, holding onto her sari as if it was the only lifeline in the storm. And me, I stood in the middle, alone. That's when the decision was made. My father, without even glancing in my direction, said, "He's my son, he's coming with me." My mother shot back, "Fine, then she's mine. My daughter stays with me." For a fleeting second, I thought she meant me. But then I saw her hand resting gently on my sister's shoulder, not me, her. The silence that followed still echoes in my bones. I remember my voice trembling as I asked, "And what about me?" Neither of them looked at me, neither of them answered. 2 days later, a stranger from the social services came. She smelled of perfume and paper, carrying a clipboard that looked heavier than I was. She smiled too wide when she said, "Don't worry, sweetheart, we're going to find you a safe place." A safe place, that's what they called it. But in reality it was a cold building with peeling paint bunk beds that smelled of disinfectant, and walls that swallowed your cries whole. I used to cry myself to sleep, pressing my face into the thin pillow, wondering what was wrong with me. Was I too loud, too quiet, not smart enough, not lovable enough? Because surely if I had been worthy, someone would have fought for me. Someone would have chosen me, but no one did. Years passed like that, birthdays without candles, holidays without gifts, family dinners without family. I learned to eat fast, to defend my small plate of food, to never trust a smile that seemed too kind. Because kindness always came with strings attached, and yet, somewhere deep inside, I kept this tiny flame alive. A hope that maybe one day my mother would walk through the door and say, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Come home." Or maybe my father would show up, lift me onto his shoulders and say, "You're my daughter too. I didn't forget you." But the door never opened. The only thing that grew inside me was silence, a silence that screamed louder than any words. When I turned 16, I finally realized something. No one was coming. No one was going to save me. If I was ever going to survive, I would have to become my own protector, my own family. But even as I tried to harden myself, the wound never closed. Abandonment is like poison. It seeps into your veins, making you question your worth every single day. And I carried that poison with me when I left care. I thought marriage would wash it away, that stepping into a new family would finally give me the love and security I'd been starved of since childhood. I was wrong, because the day I walked into my husband's home, I had no idea that the woman waiting for me, his mother, wasn't going to heal my wounds. She was going to make them bleed again. I was barely 20 when I said yes to marriage. Some people marry for love, some for money, but me, I married to escape the empty rooms of state care, the birthdays no one remembered, the constant ache of being unwanted. When my husband's family came to see me, they smiled, spoke politely, and promised I'd be treated like their own daughter. My heart wanted so badly to believe them that I ignored the hesitation in my gut. For once, I thought maybe fate was finally giving me a second chance. The wedding day felt like a fairy tale stitched together with borrowed fabric. I wore a heavy red dress, my hands trembling under layers of gold bangles, and when I glanced at my mother-in-law, my new saws, I thought I saw approval in her eyes. It was fleeting, but it was enough to calm my heart. When I entered their home, the air was filled with laughter, the clinking of plates, the smell of saffron rice and fried chicken. Relatives clapped as I performed the rituals, and everyone showered blessings. But behind all the noise, I noticed something else, my saws watching me closely, her eyes sharp like a knife sliding between ribs. At first I brushed it off. After all, I was used to suspicion, used to being the odd one out. I told myself, she just needs time. She'll warm up. But I was wrong. The first night in my new home, when the celebrations died and the relatives left, she knocked softly on our bedroom door. My husband opened it, still laughing, still glowing from the joy of the wedding, but her face was stone. She whispered something to him that I couldn't hear, and when he came back to bed, his smile had dimmed. He didn't touch me, didn't say much, just turned away and went to sleep. The next morning she served us tea. The china cup rattled in its saucer as she placed it in front of me. Her words were sweet, but her tone was coated in poison. This house runs on respect. A good Ba, who keeps quiet, cooks well, and never questions her elders. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Days passed, and the mask slipped further. She started controlling everything, what I cooked, what I wore, even how long I could sit with my husband. At first it was little things, a sharp look when I added too much salt, a mocking smile when I folded the laundry the wrong way. Then it escalated. She would complain loudly during family dinners. Some girls come from broken homes and think they know how to be wives, but they bring nothing but shame. Everyone laughed nervously, but I sat frozen, my cheeks burning, broken home. She knew my past, and she used it like a weapon. I tried to win her over. I tried cooking her favorite dishes, waking earlier than everyone else, even biting my tongue when I wanted to scream. But nothing was enough. My efforts were always wrong, my existence always inconvenient, and slowly she began pulling my husband away from me, whispering in his ear when she thought I wasn't looking, filling his mind with doubts, planting seeds of suspicion. One evening I walked past their room and heard her say, "Be careful, she's not like us. Girls who aren't loved by their parents can never love anyone else." I froze, pressing my hand against the wall to steady myself. The words pierced me deeper than any knife. That night I lay awake beside my husband, his back turned to me, and I realized something chilling. I hadn't escaped anything. I had only stepped into another prison, one with prettier walls but sharper chains. And the woman holding the keys was my mother-in-law. At first I thought my mother-in-law's cruelty was just a storm that would pass. But storms eventually clear, don't they, with her? The storm only grew darker. Every morning she found new ways to remind me that I didn't belong. If I woke up late, even by 5 minutes, she would bang pots in the kitchen so loudly the whole house rattled. If I cooked, she'd taste the food, spit it out in front of everyone, and hiss. Even a servant could cook better. And when relatives came over, she wore a mask of sweetness, praising me, calling me her daughter. But behind closed doors the mask slipped, and her venom dripped like poison into my veins. The worst part was how easily she manipulated my husband. At first he would defend me weakly. "Amy, she's trying, give her time." But soon her words became his, her doubts became his, and slowly I started losing him. I still remember one evening, the air heavy with the smell of mutton curry I had cooked. My husband came home tired, sat down to eat, and before he could take a bite, she leaned over his shoulder and whispered, loud enough for me to hear, "Careful, better she put too much chili. She wants you sick." He looked at me suspiciously, as if her poison had already infected his blood. That single glance, his eyes filled with doubt instead of love, shattered me more than all her insults combined. Nights grew colder. He stopped sitting beside me, stopped laughing at my jokes, stopped asking how my day was. Every word we shared was filtered through her. I was living in a house full of people, yet drowning in loneliness far deeper than the state care I had once endured. Then came the neighbors. I noticed the way they started whispering when I passed. I heard one of them murmur, "That's the new bride who fights with her saws all the time." My throat tightened. I had never said a word, never raised my voice, yet somehow she had painted me as the villain in every corner of our small community. She spread rumors like wildfire, that I was lazy, that I disrespected her, that I didn't know how to manage a household. And people believed her. Why wouldn't they? She was respected, loved, a woman known for her piety and wisdom. And me, I was just the unwanted child, the outsider. One night I overheard her in her room, speaking softly on the phone. I held my breath as I pressed my ear against the wall. Her words chilled me. "Don't worry. I'll never let her control this house. As long as I'm alive, she'll stay in her place." Her place. That's what she called it. My place wasn't beside my husband, wasn't as her equal, wasn't as part of the family. No, my place was beneath her, chained by her rules, silenced by her gossip, humiliated by her words. I clenched my fists so hard that my nails dug into my palms. For a moment I saw myself screaming back, flipping the table, breaking the silence. But then I remembered the little girl I used to be, the one no one chose, the one no one wanted, and I swallowed my anger, burying it deep. But poison, when buried, doesn't disappear. It spreads slowly, silently, and that's when I realized she wasn't just trying to control me. She was trying to erase me. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding with a new kind of fire. Because I finally understood. If I stayed silent, if I let her win, I would disappear completely. And I was not going to let that happen. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought my life was finally about to change. For months I had endured my mother, in-law's insults, her poison, her cold silences. But now I carried a new life inside me. My child, my family. I thought maybe, just maybe, this baby would soften her heart, unite us, heal the cracks in my marriage. The night I told my husband, my hands trembled as I held his, "We're going to be parents." I whispered, a small smile breaking through the fear. His eyes widened, but before I could even feel his embrace, the door creaked open. She was there, my saws, her shadow stretching across the floor. Her lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. She didn't congratulate me. She didn't bless me. Instead, she said in a voice dripping with venom, "So she finally trapped you." Trapped, that's what she called my child. Not a blessing, not hope, a trap. From that day her cruelty doubled. She whispered into my husband's ear, "She'll use this child to control you. She's clever. You don't know her like I do." And I watched the distance grow. Each night he lay further away from me in bed. Each morning he barely looked at me. One evening I overheard her talking to him in the living room. I stood hidden by the doorway, my hands on my growing belly. She said, Beta, mark my words, the baby isn't yours. Girls like her, from broken homes, they can't be trusted. She has brought you shame. I gasped so loudly I nearly gave myself away. My knees buckled, and I had to press my back against the wall just to breathe. How could a woman, a mother herself, say such filth about me and my unborn child? That night, when I tried to confront my husband, he avoided my eyes. He muttered, Amy says, and stopped. That was all I needed to hear. He didn't trust me any more. He trusted her. I spent nights crying into my pillow, muffling my sobs so no one could hear. I'd press my hand against my stomach and whisper promises to my unborn baby. I won't leave you. I won't abandon you like they abandoned me. I'll protect you no matter what. But inside, something else was growing, something darker. Anger, fire, a voice that hissed, enough. No more tears, no more begging. She thinks she's won, but she doesn't know who she's playing with. The breaking point came one morning during breakfast. I placed food on the table, careful to make her favorite parathas. She took one bite, spat it into her hand, and threw it back onto the plate. Poison, she snapped, loud enough for my husband to hear. She's trying to kill me, and the baby inside her is cursed. Something inside me cracked. For the first time, I looked her straight in the eyes, and I didn't look away. My hands trembled, but my voice was steady. You will regret this. The room went silent. Even my husband froze, staring at me as if he didn't recognize me anymore. And in that silence, I felt a strange calm wash over me. The girl who had been abandoned, the wife who had been humiliated, the mother who had been doubted, she died in that moment. In her place was someone else, someone who wouldn't just survive, someone who would fight back. I smiled, small, cold, dangerous. And in that smile I made a vow. If she wanted war, she was about to get one. After that breakfast, when I finally looked into my Saws's eyes and told her she would regret this, something shifted inside me. She laughed at me that day, a cruel, mocking laugh, the kind that says, you're powerless, you can't touch me. And maybe until then I had been powerless. Crying into pillows, begging for scraps of love, swallowing humiliation like bitter medicine. But that day I decided tears were over. Now I would fight, not with screaming, not with plates crashing against walls. No, I knew her too well. She thrived on scenes, on making me look hysterical, unstable, unworthy. If I wanted to win, I had to play her own game silently, patiently, with a smile that hid my rage. So I became the obedient Ba, who she always wanted. I lowered my gaze, folded my hands, nodded at every insult. Outwardly, I was quiet, but inside I was collecting everything, every whisper, every lie, every act of cruelty. I started with the neighbors, the same women she had poisoned against me with gossip. I began greeting them warmly, helping with their errands, showing kindness where she had only sown malice. Slowly their whispers changed. They began to see me not as the villain, but as the victim. Their eyes softened when they looked at me, and I knew her grip was slipping. I also began watching her closely. She was careful, but not careful enough. I noticed how she hid money in the lining of her cupboard, how she exaggerated her illnesses when my husband was around, how she used her phone late at night when everyone else was asleep. I kept notes quietly, like a detective building a case. The house became a battlefield of silence. At family gatherings, she would throw subtle insults, and I would smile sweetly, responding with words so gentle they almost sounded like respect, but layered with truths sharp enough to cut her. The relatives began noticing cracks in her mask. Her stories didn't add up anymore, and my husband, he began to hesitate. Doubt flickered in his eyes, brief but undeniable. The more she pushed, the more desperate she sounded. And desperation, I knew, was weakness. One evening I set the stage. The relatives were gathered for dinner. I cooked every dish to perfection, laying the table with care. As we ate, she made her usual jab. A Bahu who can't manage her home is a shame to her family. I smiled, lifted my head, and said calmly, Amy, you're right. A home should be managed with honesty. No secrets, no lies. Otherwise, the whole house rots. The silence was heavy. Everyone looked at her. She froze, her fork suspended in midair, her face tightening. For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. That silence gave me power, and in that power I saw the beginning of her downfall. From that day on, she wasn't laughing any more. She was watching me, closely, nervously, like a queen who finally realized the servant she underestimated had risen to the level of a rival. And she was right to be afraid, because I wasn't done yet. This wasn't the end of my revenge. It was only the beginning. The day it all came crashing down started like any other. The smell of fried onions in the kitchen, the faint hum of the ceiling fan, my husband's footsteps echoing through the hall. But something inside me knew this was the day I would no longer stay silent. By then, I had gathered everything. Months of watching, listening, collecting. Her hidden stash of money, the lies she spread, the phone calls she thought no one heard. Every thread of poison she had spun, I had twisted back into a rope strong enough to hang her own reputation. That evening the living room filled with family, relatives, neighbors, cousins, everyone she loved to impress. She sat on her favorite chair, her chin high, eyes glittering with that old authority. I could feel her confidence like a wall pressing down on me. But today I wasn't afraid. Today I was the storm. I served tea, smiling sweetly, making sure her cup landed in her hands first. She took a sip, smug, certain she still ruled the house, and that's when I spoke. Amy, I said softly, I think the family deserves to know the truth. The room froze. Cups clinked against saucers. My husband looked at me, confused, his brow furrowing. She laughed nervously, waving her hand. Truth, don't be silly. What truth? I reached into my dupatta and pulled out the phone I had hidden there. With a single tap, the room filled with her voice, recordings of her whispering lies about me, twisting poison into my husband's ears, mocking the very people now sitting in front of her. Her face drained of color. She reached for the phone, but I pulled it back, my voice steady. This is who she is, not the kind, gentle woman you all think, but the one who tried to erase me. The relatives gasped. My husband's eyes widened, his mouth falling open as he heard his mother's voice in those recordings. She's not like us. She can never love you. The child isn't yours. He looked at me, then really looked at me for the first time in months. His hands trembled. His mother stammered, denying, swearing, calling me a liar. But the evidence was undeniable. The room erupted. Neighbors shook their heads, relatives whispered harshly, cousins avoided her eyes. The mighty queen of the household sat cornered in her own kingdom, her power crumbling like dust. She tried to stand, but her knees buckled. She tried to speak, but her words drowned in the silence that followed, a silence that wasn't mine this time, it was hers. I sat there, calm, watching the woman who once laughed at my pain, who once spat at my food, who once called my child a curse reduced to nothing. My husband finally turned to me, his eyes wet, his lips trembling with regret. He tried to speak, but I raised my hand. Not today. Today wasn't about him. Today was about me. I looked around the room at every pair of eyes staring, and I said only one thing: never mistake silence for weakness. And then I stood, my head high, my back straight, my baby safe inside me, and I walked out of that living room not as the unwanted girl, not as the broken wife, not as the victim of her poison, but as the woman who had taken her power back, And that is how my story turned from silence to strength. Maybe you've lived through betrayal too. Maybe you've felt the sting of being unwanted, of being silenced. But remember this, every shadow hides a fire waiting to rise. If my story moved you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to this channel because there are countless more stories like mine. Stories of betrayal, survival, and revenge that deserve to be heard. Leave a comment below. Tell me if you've ever faced a moment when silence became your weapon. And if you want to walk deeper into these hidden truths, watch the next story waiting for you here. This isn't the end. It's only the beginning. Asterisk.